Hi everyone, my name's Leanne Sheargold and welcome to the next episode of Innate Wisdom. So today I want to share with you some of my trauma and the physical symptoms and what was happening in my body, which I totally ignored. I was totally clueless about it. So when I was 28, I had a stroke. So my three sons were under the age of 5, and basically overnight I turned into a 90-year-old lady. I couldn't walk, I couldn't dress myself, I couldn't drive. My speech was okay, but I would mix up similar things like pencil and pen. So leading into that, I was really stressed, highly stressed. And the night before, I actually had a headache, which leading up to that, I had never had a headache in my life. And it was quite strange. I remember saying to my husband at the time that I had a headache, and he's like, "Oh, that's really weird for you." So I went and took some Panadol and went off to a preschool thing that I was participating in that night. And the headache went away, and the next day I was fine. It wasn't until the afternoon when I went to get one of my sons from school. I was in a shopping centre picking up some milk and bread, and I just felt this weirdness come through my body, and I clung onto the shelves to keep me upright. And I just knew that something weird had happened in my body, but I really wasn't quite sure. I was more panicked and distraught about getting back in my car to go get my son from the bus stop. So I walked out to my car in the parking lot, still feeling really weird and spacey and just, not aware of what was going on around me. So I got in the car, and it was only then that I realised that I couldn't see out of my right eye. And that's when I started to cry. I did actually try to move my car, thinking I could just bluff my way to the bus stop, but I couldn't. And I was quite scared by then, because I'm like, oh my God, I can't see out of my right eye. I can only see out of the left, which, to drive was quite scary. So I went back into the shopping centre and went to the centre, the ladies, and told them. And by this time I was crying my eyes out. And I said to them, that I couldn't see out of my right eye, and they brought a wheelchair around so I could sit in it. And they were saying to me to sit back, and I'm like, I can't feel, where is the back of the chair? I couldn't feel anything on my right side. And I was just, I don't know, I really wasn't aware what was going on. All I was concerned about was my son getting at the bus stop waiting for me, not knowing where I was. But I did manage to mumble something to them, and they asked for my neighbour's phone number. So I rang that. I was coherent enough to give them my neighbour's number, and they reassured me that she was going to the bus stop to pick up my son. And then they asked for my next of kin, so I gave them Glenn's work phone number. And then I just I didn't lose consciousness, but it was like my body could then relax. It was like I was on this hypervigilant trying to stay with it because of my concern about my son. But once I gave over those details, I was fine. I still stayed conscious, but mentally, my brain, I just sort of drifted off somewhere else, because I wasn't in pain. I was scared shitless. I was crying. I wasn't sure what was going on. And the office ladies, they were just, the centre management, were so nice. They just, stayed there with me, and I could feel, they made sure they stood on the left side so I could see them and hear them. And, they would have, one of them I could feel had her hand on my shoulder just for comfort. And they took me around to the doctor's centre. And then, I could hear the office lady getting the doctor to come out, and them saying, ring an ambulance straight away. And so the whole time I was just floating. So I'd sort of float out, which I know it sounds like I was unconscious, but I wasn't. I'd sort of feel like this wave would come over me and I would just drift away on the wave. I think they did ask me a couple of questions. I can't really remember. And then, they just reassured. The office lady said they rang the neighbour again and she'd picked up James, my son. So that was like a relief. And then I actually heard, it felt like forever, but I actually heard my husband's car. And I know this is really, really weird, but he has like a V8 and I know the sound of his car. And I said to the ladies, oh, my husband's arrived now. And I think they just thought I was losing it. And then he walks in the door. So they were like, oh, okay. And they said to him, oh, she said you were here, or she heard your car. And I just really, even then, I think I could relax because I knew Glenn was there and he was going to make sure I was okay and everything like that. So, so then I ended up going to hospital. I was in hospital, I don't know, for about 10 days. They recognised that I had a stroke and I had a lumbar puncture and a whole range of things. I was so sensitive to the light. It took me like 12 months to recover. So my writing, I would sort of clutch. I couldn't really write. It took me a long time to get that skill back. And the hospital wouldn't let me leave the hospital because I had like a few stairs to go up and down to get into my house. So I had to go up and down. I had to practice doing the stairs at the hospital, and so they wouldn't let me go until then. They also had discussed, because I was 28 and I needed rehabilitation, whether I should go into like a nursing home, and then my husband was so against that. So they let me go home, but I had people come out, like physio and all of that came out to my house. And then when I got home, I couldn't, dress myself or anything else. Imagine your own mum, thank God it was my own mum, having to help you even have a shower, get your undies on, help you get dressed. There's no way I could brush my hair at all. So my mum was there for a fair few weeks, helping me with all of those sorts of things. And then my mum had to leave and my mother-in-law was coming, and I remember the panic and saying to my mum, all right, this week I have to be able to get my own undies on. There's no way in hell I want my mother-in-law helping me. Can you imagine? Oh my God, there's nothing worse. So yes, I was able to actually then get my undies on, even though they were twisted and all up the cracks and everywhere else, but at least I got them on. So I did take a fair while to recover from that. And then it was a stroke. They did the scans, a blood vessel had burst in my brain. But then from there on, I kept having like cluster migraines that would bring on the stroke symptoms. And that was also very scary because, my sons would go to school or they'd go to daycare, and then when they'd come home, I'd be back in the hospital. So that sort of went on for 6 months, me in and out of the hospital. And so things at home were very stressful. Glenn and my relationship was quite, very tender, I would possibly say. I know that neither of us were happy, but it felt like because of the stroke, I needed him to care for me. And so we had sort of stuck together. But it just sort of felt like we were, I felt like maybe he was walking on eggshells and I was just trying to cope and survive each day and cope with going to the hospital all the time. And so in my body, it was really hard because I was so depressed. Like, the fact that I couldn't drive, I couldn't dress myself, I couldn't feed my kids. I was basically a child myself. I got very, very depressed. Even suicidal. I thought about, how I was going to do that. And I just hated myself because I'd actually, before I had the stroke, in 3 days' time, I was actually going to go to university and start my teaching degree. So I just felt like my whole world had shattered and the rug had been pulled out from under me. It was quite overwhelming and hard, and I just couldn't cope. You know, I had my 3 sons who I adored. They were my lifeline. In fact, they were the reason why I woke up every morning, why I chose to stay, why I kept pushing through and doing the physio and continuing. You know, things between my husband and I at that time, like I knew that we loved each other, but it just wasn't enough. We were just both unhappy, but it was like I feel like he felt an obligation to look after me and care for me now. We just had to make the most of it. And for me, having to rely on him for everything was really hard. I think more so not being able to care for my kids was the hardest thing, and the worry of them going to school and then coming back and I wasn't at home. And in my body, oh my goodness, it was chaotic. My body had shut down, my mind had shut down, I hated myself. There was so much stress in my body and not coping and not knowing what was going on, not understanding it. There was no internet. There was no Google, Mr. Google. Like, it couldn't be my best friend. I couldn't look and see. I went to a variety of different neurologists trying to find out why I kept happening to them. I was changing medication, one to the other, to the other, to the other, because they were making me feel sick or whatever. And it wasn't until I actually went to Newcastle, a professor who was a neurologist. He was very old, and he sort of explained that what was happening, that my body was so stressed, that I needed to do meditation. I needed to do something to release the stress, to calm my body, to calm my thoughts. And he actually diagnosed like the cluster migraines with stroke symptoms. I know it's more technical in the medical world. And he sort of started me on medication for like having, it's gone out of my brain now, the words. But it was like my brain was being triggered by the migraine with the stroke symptoms and the light sensitivity and all of those sorts of things. So yeah, I tried a fair few different medications, but he actually found one that actually worked for me, and it was able to stabilize my body. I stacked on so much weight, but at least I wasn't ending up in the hospital all the time. You know, I tried to do some sort of meditation and, you know, but when you're a mum with 3 kids and you're trying to learn how to walk again. So I did my best. I did end up joining a spiritual group, but it was a lady who did weekly meditations, and that did actually help a lot. But that also started my journey into the spiritual world, and it really was the kickoff for me starting to develop my own spiritual gifts coming back from when I was a child, which was wonderful. But it was also scary because my body, physically, mentally, emotionally, all of the layers were trying to heal. And it was like me trying to tell myself, I'm okay, I'm going to go back to university and I'm going to be a good mum and everything else. But I still had to heal through the different layers, you know, like physically when I started to get better and I started to be able to hold a pen for 3 seconds. But emotionally, I hadn't done the healing. You know, mentally, my brain was still in a bad state. So it took at least 12 months for me to actually be in a lot better state, to be more in tune with my body, to know what's going on. And also starting to find myself. I think I was very lost as mum and mummy. I didn't know who I was. My identity had gone, and I was just mummy, being in that world of caring, devoting 1,000% to my children and not paying any attention to what was going on in my body and how I was feeling and what my body was actually needing. So that's one of my traumas that I had when I was 28, and I think I'll leave the rest for another video. All right, I'd love to hear from you if you've got any questions or if you've had a stroke or you know somebody else that's had a stroke. I know out on Google now there's so many great resources, which I just didn't have because Google didn't exist. Okay, thank you all. Have a lovely day. Bye.